So Adam, we talk again. Lots of things still happening in trade, and the tariffs world is still blowing up in some ways. Where do we stand today? It's almost midnight in the US for all these extra tariffs. Where do we stand?
Yeah, well, I think everyone's generally calmed down a little bit and is thinking through it in a bit more systematic sort of way, and a bit more let's wait and see and just do what we need to do.
Well, the markets have clearly reacted, so there's a lot of uncertainty out there, and so we've got a couple of things in play here. We've got that the Trump administration have said tariffs are going into effect. Whether they indicated they're open negotiations with Vietnam's path. We've got China who's doubling down, and Trump's reacting to the doubling down. So you've got the big elephant in the room really trying to push his weight around. And you've got some, as you say, people don't know what's going on, which is the advice is just don't overreact, just play it calm for now and see what happens. Is that a fairly good synopsis?
Yeah, and when I said people are being a bit more systematic about it and just a bit more wait and see, I mean people that maybe don't focus deeply on this as part of their work, whereas where it's really hit them and shocked them, they've taken on board a little bit about what's being spoken about and how countries are going about it, and they're sort of calmed down and just waiting a little bit to see what happens. And I guess that's what we're going to talk about today. What's going to happen?
Yeah, and interesting. Just talking to some clients, some exporters and buyers, US focused. They're all just in waiting game. They're not seeing, they're uneasy, but they're not seeing orders being cancelled. They're not seeing huge adjustments yet because they're waiting. And it's that uncertainty that just sort of surrounds us right now with what that means. So the Vietnamese authorities have been taking the approach from the very start, we'll negotiate. As unpalatable as that may be, and irrational economically as that may be, it's clearly the best interest of Vietnam to do so. What's going to happen with those negotiations, Adam?
Well, I found interesting 2 days ago now. So a friend sent me a few photos and some updates out of Hanoi, where there was a big meeting with the leaders of the government, leaders of industry, and people that they take their experts and their confidants, so to speak, with regards to how to approach the US, how to work with the US, but more importantly was their approach with the world and other countries. So they've got the team in America to talk about that, but they're working on how they need to work with other countries in this too. It's not just about the US.
Yeah, it's interesting. So on the US side, my expectation, and this is just a gut feel, is that we'll get a negotiated position in a number of days. Tariffs will go into full effect, and then they'll pare back somewhat. What they pare back to for Vietnam, I don't know. But I think there'll be a slight pullback in the negotiation process, because the Trump administration needs to show that they can negotiate, because otherwise China's got full leverage. So I think that's clear. But I think the international aspect is really important. So I've got some notes here. We've got Spanish Prime Minister, EU Trade Commissioner, Xi Jinping, and potentially Emmanuel Macron from France coming across, all in the next week or two.
Yep.
That's big.
All to Vietnam.
All to Hanoi.
Yep. Exactly.
So you can see what this administration, US's approach is an isolationist approach, and that may not be, or maybe what they're trying to achieve, but definitely pushes countries like Vietnam, who are exposed, away from trusting the regime. They may negotiate, but that new world order is being pushed on the world out of necessity, I believe, and this is an evidence of that.
Yeah, and there's two things around that. So if you look at just initially when we saw all the rate, the percentage lifts across countries, it hit the developing world harder, but it also hit. It seemed like it was somewhat targeted to push the developing world into making a decision, choose America or choose China. Yeah, so by that I mean when you look at the Philippines, 17%, they made a decision to go with America, and they're paying some consequences for that, where other countries won't do that. They will sit in the middle because they want to work with everyone. It's part of their economic needs. Yeah. So that's,
but is that an outcome, or is that the purpose? I think that's just an outcome.
Yeah, I think Trump's team, it is an outcome, but I think underneath that they want to see people make a decision and loyalty towards the US outside of just how they trade, so what they buy. So that's fine. So as I said last Thursday, Vietnam can go to America. They can buy their defense equipment. They need it. They can't buy from Russia. Russia's in a war, and they never buy defense equipment from China. So that surplus will come down. Agriculture, the American agriculture sector is going to get severely hurt because they won't be able to supply China. Vietnam can drop tariffs on that process and supply the Chinese market, and Brazil will do that too. So they're two easy gives, like with just common sense gives that is good for Vietnam.
And this is where it comes down to. A lot of the discussions that you're having and a lot of experts out there are doing rational responses and rational discussions. And I still come back to the point that these tariffs were not rational. They were a flawed premise in so many ways. And the tariff have been levied in a way that doesn't make logical sense, economic sense in any way, that there's decisions being made because of that. And I'll give you the example, and I saw this, I think I shared it with you a few days ago. The classic example is a wealthy person has made lots of money, employs a poor person to be their cleaner. And so the wealthy person is willing to pay the poor person, give them money. The poor person doesn't have disposable income to spend a whole lot of money. The poor person is not taking advantage of the rich person by not spending money. That's not how it works, and that's what the impact is. That analogy is impact on countries. The fact that a poorer country doesn't spend as much in the US because they don't have the money. That's not how things work, and that is, if you try to go down a rational path, you'll twist yourself around and you won't get anywhere. So that's why I come back to, and I think the important thing is consequences. What does that mean? And for trade consequences from Vietnam is that it's going to be a pivot. They are going to try to get a reduction. And with China fighting, Vietnam may actually be the better of two evils if you look at the rates decisions, if you've got some manufacturing split across countries. Apple, for example, where are they going to stand? Because they're going to be hit big time, and Vietnam's a lesser of two evils in that context for manufacturing.
Yeah, well, just quickly, because I think the Apple one's a great example, such as Samsung, but with all these world leaders coming to Vietnam next week, the conversations won't be around free trade, they'll be around fair trade. Yeah? And I think that's the shift in the world. We won't hear the word free anymore. It's all going to be about fair. And they'll have to find a way to find agreement on what that fair means. Yeah?
But I don't know if they need to, because we already have free trade agreements. We have negotiated Europe, Asian countries, China, a lot of these countries, Vietnam has already negotiated free trade agreement. There's been a fair negotiation. Now it's always up for renegotiation, but I think this trust and building longer, deeper connections on what is fair, I think is a fair point. But free trade's already there. Agreements are already in place.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at a bit about as well is, so the EU are going to re-engage with China. They pulled away out of the alliance with the US. All right. Now they're going to re-engage. Yep. Now, how do they re-engage? Is it going to be going into China again under a fair trade deal, set up manufacturing? I don't see that. Maybe it involves setting up something in Vietnam that protects them somewhat, and where they can work with China and the consumers in China, but not actually be that concerned about losing their IP and so forth again. That's just one example on how fair might work between all these people that are visiting. The other one is that when we think of Apple supply chains and things like that, I don't think the developed world appreciates what's involved in manufacturing. What you have to give up. You have to give up your environment, the pollution, the industrial waste, the type of work you need to do, the hundreds and thousands of workers and the type of work they need to do, the damage that has on their body, their psychology. Like the developed world hasn't done this in 30, 40 years. I don't think they understand what's required to be a manufacturing country and what you need to give up and lose to be a manufacturing country.
And on top of that, manufacturing, the actual assembly factory is a very, very small part of that. That supply chain and the componentry that goes into that is immense.
Hundreds.
And the
Hundreds of
verification,
companies.
the approval and verification and inspection of that entire supply chain, and to make sure that up to standard. The reject rates in factories for first runs of products is enormous. And so this is just a ludicrous trying to suggest that this moves back to the States. It's just one of the stated objectives. And okay, so bring us back to Vietnam. Vietnam sits here and goes, "Oh, can we save something of the US export? It's a big part of our economy." That's the negotiation, and there'll be some movement and also a pivot. So we're okay. China, it's a much lesser amount to the US, and they've got a lot bigger domestic market. They're going to bully up. You've got Germans, for example, they need to export, and the US has been a good market for them. They're going to look for other markets as well. So the whole balance here and where everyone sits, every country's slightly different, but every decision they're making now is, oh, we can't rely upon the US. And does Vietnam come out of this as being, oh, you've been unfairly punished, you're the good guy, and you're attractive? So I'm not necessarily expecting to see lesser FDI in Vietnam, even with high trade rates to the US. I'm expecting Vietnam to be sort of a good guy in the worldwide play here.
Yeah, and once again, back to the last couple of months when we've been talking, FDI into ASEAN, the main contribution is China. That is bringing manufacturing to ASEAN to export to markets all around the world, not just the US, and to also manufacture and send back to China as well, right? They bring jobs, they bring economic development, and it's so important. And we all need to remember, China's got a playbook for this. In 2016, Trump went at him. Then Biden went at him. First, China didn't react with tariffs. They reacted with their wolf warrior technique, which failed. They won't go down that route again. They've learned. So they're going to remain flexible. They're going to project fairness. Now, if that's reality, let's see. But they're going to project that, and they're going to remain flexible. And they've learned their lessons. And they've experienced this, and others haven't.
Yeah, and if you look at what Canada's done and what China's doing, they're doing targeted response with some of the tariffs, but also some of the non-tariffs, such as where they're going to reduce demand and prohibit. So they're targeting things that is going to affect Trump's base. They're trying to hit the political impact as well as the economic impact, and they're smart. They're very much going on a path of a playbook, as you say, to defend their economy and defend their system that they've developed. And to move back to this scenario of rich person, poor person, rich people always have more money to spend, therefore they buy more, and poorer people spend less because they have less money. China's moved up that value chain. China's going to eventually be the elephant that spends all the money and everyone else is poorer, which is what's happening in the ASEAN region. As you say, they're expanding, they're spending, they're investing because they've got the wealth to do that. This has changed, and the US is not particularly comfortable with this scenario, and fighting with China is going to be a bloodbath. And that's where standing back, it's interesting of who's going to blink first, because I'm not sure China needs to blink right now.
No, they'll be patient. I said flexible with this. What do they don't need to do anything. America's doing it for them. America is pushed the whole world away. America's doing China's job. Like, China don't need to do anything here with regards to other countries. Yeah. And then I think last week I brought up the importance of, we'll see these trading blocks or alliances form. Yeah. And like Japan, Korea, and China are in talks on how to work together. Now, those three countries traditionally don't get on well. And they've all come together because of US decisions. Yeah? And today we're talking about, it's no longer a conversation of Vietnam and America. We see it's come together much better because it's not a 1 + 1 = 2. It's an integrated world, and it doesn't just go to A to B. It goes everywhere at once. So people need to look at how it's shifting and how it's moving, and it's going to shift for a long time yet.
And Trump's stated sort of, once they're back to the Gilded Age, and which people are assuming it's sort of the 1910s, 1920s Industrial Revolution in America, really takes a very simplistic approach to supply chains internationalization, and far too simplistic, and none of it can work in the way that's suggested. And even those who are behind him may not be fully supportive of all the actions he's doing, but this idea of restarting manufacturing back in the US, it's just not going to happen. No one's going, for all the reasons you mentioned there, and a return on investment for making a garment factory, a low margin garment factory to churn out garments, who's going to make that investment to make a low return, let alone the workers wanting $1 an hour, and only to know that those policies may change in the future? It's just not going to happen, let alone all the supply chain, all those problems. So where's the off-ramp for the US? And is Vietnam potentially that off-ramp to show that they're willing, and they're only moving a little bit? The 10% is all they're willing to do. The 46% was a mistake, or Vietnam gets 20 because they've cared and they've shown respect to Trump and played to his ego. Is there an off-ramp for the US here, or you don't see that?
The US, I'm not sure how they get out of the direction they've set. Once again, let's not get caught up thinking about the supply side too much. You've got to look at the demand side. And they have destroyed the demand side in their country. They've set all this uncertainty. The stock markets are plummet. That is broken. Yeah. So they've got the fixing to do. Other countries can't fix them. They're going to have to fix themselves, right?
Economic stagflation is really difficult. So increase in prices, decrease in demand, that's a problem. It's very hard to fix because your normal monetary tools don't work. Pump priming the economy creates more problems. So it becomes difficult.
Yeah, if I'm an American citizen, I'm working to save money at the moment because I haven't got a clue what's going to happen in 6 months with my job, with my salary, with my debt, or whatever. Yeah. Now,
so the US currency is sort of the world currency, reserve currency at the moment. That may change. So that's also a risk, and that would also reduce the purchasing power. But at the moment, from a Vietnam point of view, the Vietnam dong has weakened. China and the renminbi has been weakened as well, which will infuriate US. So Vietnamese products are cheaper, excluding tariffs, than they were last week. And that means that manufacturing will be benefit slightly from rates. Do you think that's sustainable? Do you think the US dollar is going to dissipate somewhat as a reserve currency? Do you think that this benefit that the dong and the Chinese yuan is getting is going to be long term, or is it a short term impact?
Yeah, I don't think much will change in that space. China's been trying to introduce their digital currency system with their banks and so forth for 5 or 6 years now. By that I mean anyone who buys, or if you buy or sell from China, you need to use their currency, right? Now, that hasn't come into play. That's been their strategy. And that is the only way I could see another currency putting pressure on the US dollar, yeah? Is based on China enforcing something like that, which is a long way off, if long way off, if ever. Yeah.
So from those in Vietnam manufacturing, exporting, those buying from Vietnam as sort of our space we work in, you're comfortable that the current currency scenario is relatively reliable for the time forward. You can deal with the costs, but the currency is what we have, and it's not going to change as reserve and base currencies. And the VND reference price to a USD, it'll fluctuate, but you think that system's fine for the time being. We don't have to worry about that so much.
I wouldn't know how it would take. It would take a bit to change procurement systems and finance systems and the invoicing and so forth to actually even set up the banking for other currencies and the approvals and things like that. So I don't know, but that's not on my radar at the moment. No.
we'll see what the Europeans talk about when they're here next week, and the Chinese leader as well. So that's a discussion. They can have those discussions. Okay, so just to sort of wrap up this discussion now, it's about to tick over midnight in the US. It's all the currencies, or the new trade tariffs are in full force for Vietnam, and for all those countries that are above the 10% ratio. It is what it is, and it'll play out in coming days. Any other thoughts for what that means for Vietnam now, or what people should do?
Yeah, just two things. So if it's been reported in the papers here, which I don't know if that's true or not, but Vietnam may go back with zero tariffs across the board. Now, if they did that, excluding vehicles and things like that, major pollutants and things that harm infrastructure, in a lot of industries it'll be fine, but it's going to impact Vietnam's trading partners in sectors because it's sector specific. Yeah. So let's see how that plays out. They can reduce the surplus, that's not a problem. They can reduce some tariffs, that's not a problem. At the end of the day, that will benefit the Vietnamese consumer, but will hurt other trading partners Vietnam works with. The final point is back to fair trade. Next week, I think behind closed doors, Vietnam works very, very well with the Chinese leadership. They do push back. They're not yes guys with them. They work well together. And I'm hoping they get across the point that let's not flood the Vietnamese market with cheap products to clean out Chinese inventory. That's one area I'd like to see them protect. And we're all waiting to see with all the EU leaders. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
Fantastic. So I suspect we'll continue talking in coming days as this evolves and very fluid. And it's always great to get your insight, and I love having a chat.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Speak soon, buddy. Bye.
Okay, thanks, Adam. Okay, bye.